Hi, so this is William Zhang. For my 20% project, I chose the bad effect of smoking and the function of lungs. So my audience of this project is the young who just started smoking because they have a chance to make their life much more healthier and more wonderful. So firstly, what is a lung? Lung is an organ in the respiratory system and it exchanges gases. It allows the air to be taken in our body and we take the oxygen in and expel the carbon dioxide out and help the oxygen to enter the red blood cells in our body. So this picture actually shows a lot of different parts of the lung. So for these organs, the trachea is an organ that connects the pharynx and larynx to the lung. And the primary bronchus is actually like a highway. So no matter when the oxygen comes in or the carbon dioxide went out all through this primary bronchus. And the pulmonary trees are a lot of veins that transfer the oxygenated blood to the right of our heart. So basically, this is the different parts of the lung. And the red blood cells has another name called erythrocyte. And the blood without oxygen will return through the red blood cells to the left side, to the right side of our body, and it will be pumped by the lung so that we could expel the carbon dioxide and take in oxygen again. Then I shift the gear to search some information about what is in a cigarette. So the main component of the cigarette is tobacco, and it also contains 600 different kinds of integrants, include a lot of poisonous elements like the crust and ammonia. So lead is an element that will find in the crust and even industrial facilities. And the ammonia is an element that will cause the kidney disease. And it will generate over 7,000 chemicals when a cigarette is burned. So tobacco is basically an agricultural crop. And the main component of tobacco is nicotine. Nicotine could stimulate the nerve system and relieve stress. So that's why when people feel very relaxed when they take in the nicotine. However, nicotine is addictive. So when people are smoked like over 4 or 5 years, their brain has already adapted the amount of nicotine, which means that they need to take in more nicotine, which means more cigarette in order to stimulate their nerve system. So if they take more cigarettes, it will definitely have a negative effect to their bodies. So in the world, there are 30% of men smoked in the world and also 27% of women. And there are 5 million people die per year, which means in every 10 seconds, a person dies because of smoking. That is very hard to believe. So there are a lot of reasons that youngs choose to smoke. The first is that they are attracted to the image. They just think the smoking folk is pretty cool, so they just like to smoke, so they like a grown up. And the second is when your friend or family member smoke, it will definitely affect you to smoke as well. Because when your friends encourage you or your parents smoke at home, so the chance for you to smoke in the future is increased significantly. And lastly, some people smoke because of the culture. So there are some regions in Russia that has over 50% of people smoked. And the bad effect of smoking is the DNA damage. Smoking will generate the abnormal cells due to the mutation and disorders. So when the abnormal cells replicated, it will generate a lot of abnormal cells and which have a very bad effect to your bodies. And the second is mouth cancer. So my grandpa has smoked for over 20 years. So last year when I came back to China and visit him, and I saw all his teeth are actually very yellow and black. And he seems to like, he is much less healthier than the people who have the same age with him. And he felt really regret to smoke. So smoking can reduce the expectancy by 7 to 8 years, and a cigarette can lose 3 minutes of life. So if a person smoked in his life, he will have 7 to 8 years shorter life than the others. And I think 7 to 8 years are enough to do many more meaningful things rather than just smoking. So smoking also costs a lot of money. If you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, it will cost $177 per week, which means $9,200 each year. And again, I think over 10,000 money can do much more meaningful things rather than just buying cigarette and affect your bodies in a negative way. And the organs that is affected by smoking most is definitely lung. So smoking will cause more mucus and infections. So it will increase the mucus cells in size and its shape, which leads to the less airflow. So less airflow basically means you have difficulty to breathe. Smoking can also cause a disease called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So this is a disease that basically just let you have the difficulties to breathe. So this is basically a picture that shows a healthy lung and the lung has smoked for like a long time. So we can just obviously see the difference between these two lungs. Then I made a lung model by myself, like which is this model. Even though it is very simple, but it can shows the lung function like clearly. So it's actually when I pour this, which means it expelled the carbon dioxide, and when I pour the bottoms, means that well, it just taking the oxygen. So basically, the lung works like this. Yep. So that is basically a lung model that I made. Then I searched some information to how to quit smoking, and we actually need a plan for this. So there is a start process, START. Set means that you set a goals that you decide to quit smoking, and T means tell your parents and your friends that you decide to quit. And I kind of forgot what A means. All right, wait a second. Or A means anticipate and get ready to it. R means remove the cigarettes from your house and your car. And lastly, T means that tell your doctors and get help from them. However, some people just smoked for a long time and they have difficulties to quit the smoke. So there is also treatment for the smoking addiction nowadays. So the first is the nicotine replacement therapy. So this basically is to send a small amount of nicotine to your brain but not include other poisonous elements. So it will reduce people's unhappy feeling so that you can just quit smoking in a pretty happy way, I think. And the second way is variant sealings. This method is actually similar to the first one. It is to send an element that have the similar function to the nicotine to your brain and affect your brain in that region. However, this treatment all have the side effects. So this treatment can cause the dry mouth and being sick. So I think basically that is my 20% project. And my reflection is that I made some obstacles during this project, and I made a lot of new terms that I not understand. After I researched for sometimes, I finally learned what is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is. And I found easy is that I made this lung model, and even though it is relatively simple, but I think I learned in a pretty good way. And the conclusion is never smoke. And I want to end this video with end this presentation with a video. Is right here, I think. This. So this basically is a video that using a pig lung to show us what happens after smoking 60 cigarettes. So this is a normal pig lung, and this is the pig lung that smoked 60 cigarettes. Yep. Thank you. Any questions?
So I love your video. I love your whole presentation.
Good. Thank you.
I would love to know how you think that you could take all the negative information and really get the younger kids to understand that when they vape or juul, that it really is the same as smoking cigarettes and they're doing the same type of damage. Like, how do you think, because the tobacco industry, they cut down on kids buying cigarettes, but now they're doing other things with nicotine in it, and it's really the same. It's causing cancer. I have a friend who now has colon cancer as a result of smoking. So I just wonder what your thoughts. Did you find any research on that, and do you have any feelings about that? How to reach some of the 13, 14-year-olds that are now saying that's glamorous, but it really isn't glamorous?
Yep. So I get some information about there are about 30% of Thailand teenagers who is under 18 that have smoked. So I think this phenomenon actually, so we cannot prevent this phenomenon happen because choosing to smoke or vape is their choice. So I think what we can do is to tell them, well, the negative effect of smoking. So let them to realize that how smoking can affect their life directly in a negative way. So if they still choose to smoke, it's their choice, and so we can just, you know. Yeah.
I've got some questions.
Okay, sure.
I got these written down. I can't even read. Okay. So excellent. Can you tell me how you made your model?
So I just basically made this model by watching YouTube videos, and it's pretty simple. So I just used a straw and cut another straw for like this, and to enter two blooms, which will represent two lungs for this. And I used the tape too, like to put in this, in order to prevent the air to come into the bottle. And when I pull these blooms like this, it just shows the lung is breathe and take the oxygen out.
So when you pull the bottom,
Yep, which means they just
air is supposed to come in.
Yep, exactly.
And then when you push in,
expel the carbon dioxide.
Expels. We've learned a lot this year about models and the limitations of models. What are the limitations for that particular model?
Limitation? Well, it's probably too simple, and there is one broom that actually cannot work right here. So there is only like this broom work. So I think that for this 20% project, if I have more time, I can just make a more complex model, like to show how lung works precisely.
Were there things that you weren't able to show in that model that actually ends up happening inside in your anatomy?
I'm not thinking about it, but I could try, and I think it will probably work.
So can you go back to the heart and the lungs?
Yep.
If possible.
Like this.
So you had the heart and lungs from one normal non-smoking individual, and the heart and lungs of one.
So you mean the video part?
Not the video part, but
this part. Okay, like this part.
Yes. So it looks like. Do you know what the black stuff is?
The infection. Like, so it probably, as I just mentioned in the PowerPoint, it's like the black stuff. It's actually more mucus and infection. So when you smoked, there are a lot of bad chemical elements that enter through your lung. So I think this black stuff is actually the bad elements that come into our bodies, and when you just smoke for thousands of cigarettes, and the lung will finally end up being like the black lung.
So that's a result of the combustion of the tobacco.
Yep.
Do you know why the heart was bigger?
The heart is bigger.
And now see, I'm trying to make connections here.
The heart is bigger. Yep. I think it's probably because when your lung have difficulty to breathe, and then so your heart will be pressed, so there is no enough oxygen in your body, so that there is more pressure to the heart, and when you keep for a long time, so the lung will have a lot of pressure, and then it will finally become bigger and bigger.
So the heart will get bigger to compensate then.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Dr. Carlos, how watch my mom and dad, but the link's not working. You can do one.
Should be Monday's email. You need audio? No.
Kind of scared now. Alrighty then. Case 16, I think. Thank you. Sweet. Sweet. Oh, well, that's my background. All right. How should I put this? All right.
Myself.
I have to put it on my phone.
And then the mic goes on. Right.
All right. That's the way it works. I think so. Right. Crap. All right. I'll deal with that later. I don't know. So how's everybody's day going? Before we start, it's a bit awkward. Needs to start the camera. Is it? Is it running? All right. Should I just start?
Go for it.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Raghu Komalapati, and for my 20% project, I did comedy. So why did I choose this topic? So when Dr. Crothers explained this massive project as a passion project, I'm a really lazy person, so the first thing that came to my mind is comedy. I originally thought I was going to use this time that he gave in class to watch my favorite comedians and, as you walk by, just say, hey, I'm doing research for my project. But I realized that there's actually a lot of cool things about it, and I actually was able to dive deep into a ton of different things. And I just think of myself as hopefully a really funny person. I mean, I try to be comedic. I hope people laugh. But yeah, so that's why I chose this topic. So before we go any further, I want to ask the audience a joke. So for people in my bio class, people I've presented this to like 15 times, I've reused this joke. So please don't answer. But what happens when a frog's car breaks down on the side of the road? Anybody? Just take a random guess. No? All right. It gets towed. So that was a pretty corny joke, but according to dictionary.com, the definition of comedy is professional entertainment consisting of jokes and satirical sketches intended to make the audience laugh. So I was technically being comedic because I was intending to make you laugh. So before we go into anything, what is comedy? So what are the different types of comedy? So the first type of comedy is affiliative humor. So this is the type of humor that everybody can understand, everybody can relate to. You don't need to have any background knowledge or anything. You can just sit there, watch this person, and just have fun while doing it. A person that does this really well is Jerry Seinfeld. He's really good at this. You don't need any experience of any sort. You can just watch him and have fun. So the next type of comedy that I'm pretty sure we've all seen at some point in our lives is aggressive comedy, or aggressive humor, excuse me. So this humor is basically a somewhat bullying kind of technique. A lot of people do this, like if you insult somebody or you're trying to make fun of somebody, this is the kind of humor you'd use. The next type of humor is really healthy. It's called self-enhancing humor. And this humor is used so that you can open yourself up to more things. So a really good person that does this is the ex-host of The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, when he says, like, I don't know much or I don't know everything. So he's putting himself down in some way, but opening himself up to different ways and to learn more. So the biggest type of humor that I see in high school especially is self-defeating humor. So this type of humor is like, I suck, I can't do this, I'm going to fail my 20% biology presentation, I'm going to fail my Spanish final. That's the kind of humor I see. So this is a really good quote from Joanne Rivers, a famous aggressive comedian. We were all laughing because life is so horrible. So what I want to get into before we start talking about the effects of comedy, how it can help us, is comedy is multifaceted. All it means is there are so many different sides to comedy. It's not just black or white, good or bad. There's gray, and there's so many different types. Some reasons why we use comedy. I'm going to be mainly talking about the good uses, but it's really hard to talk about the good uses without acknowledging that there's a bad part. And I just wanted to acknowledge that before we go on. But even though, no matter what type of comedy you use, whether it be good or bad, or which type of humor you use, it's needed and it's really healthy. So why? Why do we find something funny? So there is this field I learned about around like 2 weeks ago called gelotology. And this is the field of laughter in comedy. I mean, I think this is the coolest field ever. And if you dive even just a little bit into gelotology, the first thing that comes up is this thing called the limbic system, which is like this red, yellow, highlighted part right underneath the cerebrum. And what's really funny is the limbic system controls comedy and laughter. And the limbic system also controls the self-preservation part of our brain, which is really interesting. Why does comedy and laughter go through the self-preservation part of our brain? For example, the limbic system is really big in some animals such as the alligator. They use it to catch their prey, defend their territory. And why does it go through our self-preservation system? It's because we're social creatures. Humans have evolved to become social. Before we were civilized, we were not supposed to be secular or separated. We were supposed to be together in tribes and different things. And this is where we get the famous quote, safety in numbers. And so we were meant to be social creatures, and that's why it goes through a self-preservation system. One reason we enjoy humor so much is that our brain is hardwired to encourage us every time we get the joke. This is by Scott Weems, who has a PhD in psychology and gelotology, and he is not talking about figuratively. He is talking about literally. Literally, our brain is hardwired. So every time we get a joke or we find something funny, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel great, as a matter of fact. So why do we find something funny? Like, just why? Or different types of theories of why we find something funny. So the first type of theory is the superiority theory. So this is the oldest theory by far. It was used in ancient Greece with Plato and Aristotle. And it basically says that we find something funny because someone puts themselves above others. And although we've probably seen this really early in our lives. For example, kindergarten or preschool. We might have seen this, I love the swing personally when we go out to recess. So we go out and, there's a kid on the swing and you're like, it's my turn, can you get on? And he goes, no, you poop pants, this is my swing, you pea brain, go away. So some people might find that funny, even though it's like pretty bad, insult. He's just putting yourself above others, and that's why you might find it funny. So the next reason why you might find something funny is the incongruity theory. So this theory basically states that we find something funny because it's just so spontaneous, so random, so just mind-boggling that why we would even think of that is like why we find it funny. For example, this joke right here. I have an EpiPen. My friend gave it to me as he was dying. It seemed really important that I have it, so I kept it. So just think about that for 1 second. So your friend did not give you the EpiPen to keep as like a memorial trophy. He gave you the EpiPen to save his life. So that's why we might find something funny, because it's just so absurd. If you had any common sense, you'd use the EpiPen. So the next type of theory of why we might find something funny, is the benign violation theory. So this theory basically states that we find something funny because we violate something, whether it be a physical norm, mental norm, or a moral norm. I see this a lot in high school, but it'd be like best friends, like calling each other stupid or an idiot. You know, I do it too. But it's just supposed to be something funny, but it's relatively harmless. And the last, but most agreed upon by psychologists and gelotologists is the release theory. So this theory basically states that we use, or we find something funny as a way to relieve tension or relieve stress and anxiety. And this is really important because of social preference. As I said, we evolved as social creatures, and everybody has a preference based on the theories that they find funny. And this is really important because especially in high school, where we're all like making cliques and making groups, this is really important because if you really like the random spontaneous stuff, you're more likely to be friends with people who like that same type of comedy. So what happens, like physically, when we laugh or find something funny? So the first thing that happens is our brain starts to release hormones. So the first type of hormone it starts to release is these things called beta endorphins. So beta endorphins are basically just a type of pain suppressor and our brain secretes it. The next hormone, most famous probably, is dopamine. Now, this is nicknamed the happiness hormone. And from its nickname, you can probably tell that it makes you feel a lot of pleasure, makes you feel really good on the inside. So that's why maybe when you laugh, you just feel really good. And last but not least, and most psychologists and neurologists and gelotologists have no idea why, but our brain secretes these things called HGHs, or human growth hormones. Why our brain secretes this is beyond anyone, but it stimulates cell growth. So as in the name, it helps you grow and helps you, heal faster. But this can have some pretty profound effects on the body. The first thing it does, like when you laugh like ha, but like really hard, is you increase the flexibility of your blood vessels. Whether that be your veins, your arteries, or even your heart, it increases your fitness and just the flexibility in general. And also, because you release those beta endorphins, you get a much higher pain tolerance. That's why maybe, when you're going through surgery or something, you might use laughing gas. Because when you use laughing gas, your brain starts to secrete these beta endorphins, and you have a much higher pain tolerance. And also, which I found really cool, is you have a reduced healing time. Because of those HGHs, or human growth hormones, that our body secretes when we find something funny, you actually heal quicker. So laughing itself. So how many of you in the audience, maybe, I don't know, spend 10 minutes on a rowing machine, 15 minutes on a bike, or maybe 20 minutes running every day? Yeah, a couple people. So, I don't know, laughing 100 times is actually equal to both of those, or all three. It's when I saw this, I was like, I don't know why I'm not fit as like everybody else in the grade, but you know what? It makes sense somehow, and it works. So I wanted to connect this to how it affects us as high schoolers. So high school is probably the most, probably interesting time of our lives, going through a lot of things. A lot of people are going through depression, you have a ton of stress and anxiety, and there's a ton of psychological things that go along with it. And I'm no anomaly for this, especially in the first half of my freshman year this year. I was stressed to the brim, especially with this class. The expectations that he has for us are just insane. And to meet with them is just, I don't know how. So I'm no anomaly, basically. But there's some serious issues with this, for depression especially. So 30% of all high school students feel sad, extremely sad or depressed. That might seem like a small number to some people, but that's really big. That means 1 in every 3 of your classmates, your peers, or high school has depression. It's a really large number. And also pretty scary, 31% of high schoolers skip meals due to extreme sadness or depression. And this is really bad. At this adolescent age where we're growing and our mind's developing, our body's developing, and we're just maturing, skipping meals, whether that be breakfast, lunch, dinner, 1, 2, or all 3, can have some pretty profound effects on our future. And especially with me, this happened to me as well. 36% of high school students feel less motivated. I mean, I find it really sad when someone doesn't do the things that they love, used to love, something they're passionate about. I lost interest in a ton of things once I dealt with depression and strength and anxiety. So if you have ever had a high school friend, whether it be middle school, elementary school, or before that, they're going to tell you that high school is a package. And when you open up the package, one thing that you're going to get is stress and anxiety. So the average stress level for a teenager in high school is 5.8 out of 10. Now, the reason I bring this up is I know all the parents in the room, you work really hard, put a roof over our heads, you put food on the table, and you send us to this amazing school, but your average stress level is over 5.1. So that means even though you guys work really hard, our average stress level is higher. And this is due to a multitude of things. It's not just due to maybe even peer pressure, social pressure, parent pressure, a ton of homework. It's due to a ton of different things, and it's really bad. And 34% of high school students say that there's going to be more stress next year. 50% say it's going to stay the same. And therefore, 26% think it's going to get less. But most high schoolers think it's going to be more stress or equivalent of stress. Without a doubt, there is a huge increase in the number of teens coming to us with anxiety and depression. This is by Dave Worcester, who is a therapist and a psychologist, and he is 100% right. In the past decade, high school has no longer been a happy-go-lucky, do whatever you want kind of place, but rather, a cram study kind of place. And the amount of cases of depression, stress, and anxiety have skyrocketed. And because of this, you can have some pretty profound psychological impacts. The first thing is you release 3 main hormones when you are feeling stress or anxiety or depression. The first 2 things are adrenaline and norepinephrine. Now, these 2 are really important before we were civilized. They give us our fight or flight syndrome, had our blood coursing through our veins, get ready to run, get ready to fight. But now what they do instead is if you're like me and had a Spanish test today, and your hands get all sweaty, your feet start to move, your arm starts to tremble, your mind starts to go blank, that's those 2 hormones coursing through your body. And it's pretty bad. And the last thing is cortisol. And this is nicknamed well as the stress hormone. So cortisol in small amounts is needed. But in large amount, if you're feeling a lot of stress and anxiety, it can lead to a ton of different things, whether that be obesity, the suppression of the immune system, acne, increase of blood pressure, increase of sugar, a ton of different things. And really scary, a 2016 study found that stress, anxiety, depression, it's all contagious. And this is what leads to what psychologists like to call the vicious cycle. So the vicious cycle basically states, if you have a friend with one of these 3 things, you're going to get it, you're going to give it to your friend's going to give it to his friend, and so on and so forth. And as you start to accumulate more and more, you're going to give it to more people, and it's really sad, and it just leads to this ever-ending cycle of stress, anxiety, and depression. So how comedy can help? So especially for me, I am a massive comedy nerd and a massive comedy fan. And once I started watching comedy around halfway through this year, I felt like, a lot less pressure was alleviated off of me. I felt so much better. I just forgot about all my homework, my upcoming tests. And I was just able to relax for once in high school. That's not bad. So how does it exactly counter stress and anxiety? So we talked about when you laugh or have fun or find some comedic, you release dopamine or beta endorphins. And these 2 hormones completely counter the other 3 bad ones we were talking about, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol. They completely counter it. And because you completely counter it, you feel a lot better, so you feel much more social. And as we evolve to be social animals, being social can do a lot of things. And the biggest thing that's found to do in studies is it alleviate a lot less pressure off us. And that's really helpful as high schoolers. And again, it has some pretty profound effects on the mind and body. First thing it does is it stops the vicious cycle. You know why? Because laughter is pretty contagious itself. So I'd be surprised if someone in the room raised their hand if I said who has not ever laughed when someone of their friends laughed for no good reason. You just laugh. Your friend's laughing, you start laughing, he starts laughing. You don't know why, you just do it. And it helps the body in a ton of different ways. Whether that be increased fitness in your blood vessels, release some really good hormones, or just, somehow keep you fit. And most importantly, it's just a ton of fun. We have a week and a half left to school, but we also have a ton of finals coming up. Trying to keep my mind off that. But you know what? It's good just to take a break every once in a while. Take your mind off school. Have some fun. And if you're not with comedy, I just have some, my favorites personally. My first favorite, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He is my personal favorite. If you're into the ranting and the roasting, he's the guy for you. If, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, if you kind of the affiliative humor, everybody can understand, everyone can laugh, he's the guy for you. If you like more of hanging out with popular idols or maybe some random stuff that will make you laugh, try Late Show with Stephen Colbert. So what worked? Surprisingly, there is a ton of information about the effects of depression, anxiety, and stress on teens and how comedy affects the body. But what didn't work was the fact that nobody connected them. I finished like my preliminary like research about how it affected both of the things 3 weeks in, and we have like 4 months to do it. It took me 3 months to connect everything together and see how maybe the hormones that were secreted when you feel, laughter and comedy somehow canceled out the hormones that were secreted when you felt stress or anxiety. And that was really hard. And so there's a couple ways I could have improved. I really narrowed down my base to like teenagers or people our age because I could really connect with them, and I went through a ton of things that they did. But I feel like I could just expand my base more and do some more research to see how it could help maybe even adults. So thank you. If you have any questions, I can answer them. But if I don't get to you or if you don't feel comfortable, those are my two email links, and feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks. All right. Any questions? Or not? Sweet. Because I don't have to put myself on the spot. Cool. Oh, I'm thirsty. I hope that was rolling. I know. I've only practiced this like 15 times. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no problem.
Sorry, I'm not very technical. Okay.
No one can make those things work. It always happens work. We work on it every day. It never works. It
No.
don't really work.
Wait, you having problems with the airplay?
Let's see. I think I might have got it. Let's hope. K16. Let me look. There we go.
I made a mistake. Don't do it. I learned a lot of things the hard way.
Hello. I think I'm all set.
It was rolling, right? When I went up. Thank you. I didn't want to do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna LeClaire, and I'm here to take you on the journey of child development. It's a journey we've all been on, and I was able to witness my little sister's Katie's journey, and she's 2 years old now, and it's been such a joy to watch her grow up and develop. So I'm here to share that with you today. So how do we get here? This is Katie about 10 minutes after birth, and the nurses had to intervene to conduct what is called an APGAR test on her. The APGAR test tests the reflex capability, the muscle tone, and the body color. As you could see or may have noticed, they were rubbing her back to check both the spinal cord stability as well as the body color, because if she was blue or slightly blue, that might mean there was a deprivation of oxygen. However, she was pink, and they heard a loud and strong cry, which meant that her lungs were clear of fluid. And also, you might have noticed there was a white cream-like substance on her skin. That's called vernix caseosa, and it's rich in lipids. Therefore, it's hydrophobic and repels water, so that it prevents infection on the skin both in vitro and after birth. After the APGAR test, they swaddled her or wrapped her tightly in a blanket to simulate being in the womb again, because after being in there for 9 months, it can be slightly overwhelming with all the new sounds and noises and sights. And this is Katie today at 2 years old, and she is active, engaging, and loves exploring the world around her. Every day is a new lesson. So here's a video of her reciting as much as she knows of the alphabet. So as you can see, she has changed quite a bit in just 2 years. So what are developmental milestones? Developmental milestones are things that most children should be able to do by a certain age. And psychologists and doctors often categorize these into 4 different sections. They are physical development, emotional and social development, cognitive development, and language and speech development. So what is physical development? Well, this considers both the fine and gross motor skill development. Gross motor skills are the movement of larger muscle groups such as the arms, the legs, and the torso. And fine motor skills are movements of the hands, the toes, and the feet, or smaller movements. Also, it considers the muscle growth, bone growth, and brain growth. And muscles and bones grow through what is called mitosis, or the reproduction of somatic cells. So this is Katie at 2 months old, and she is showcasing her newly improved gross and fine motor skills as reaching and grasping at the toy above her. As you can see, she has little movement or control over her movements, and this is due to a lack of development because she's only 2 months old. And this is Katie at 4 months old, as she just learned to roll over. And this took about a month to complete with much encouragement, and this included a lot of the gross motor development because she had to use her large muscle groups to push herself over. As you can tell, it was a big achievement for the entire family. This is Katie now at 2 years old, and she is able to go on adventures, run, walk, and play. It's pretty hard to keep up with her now. So more technically, from birth to 3 months, Katie was able to lift up her arms and open her eyes and develop reflexes such as latching on to the breast or bottle. 3 to 6 months, she was able to use those gross and fine motor skills to push herself up on all fours and begin to crawl towards the end. At 6 to 9 months, she was able to walk or cruise around the living room with assistance from a toy or person or furniture. At 9 to 12 months, she was able to use her thumb and fingers to pinch objects. In 1 to 2 years, you could see that again as she is scribbling with a crayon. So what are emotional and social developmental stages? Well, emotional and social includes the perception of emotions and feelings of others as well as their own emotions and feelings. Primary caregivers play a big part into this development because having a nurturing and positive relationship with them can impact future relationships. So this is Katie at 2 months old, and she is just beginning to respond to our mother's voice and mine, and she is able to learn that fussing will bring her comfort or food. So she is pretty moody at that age. And then at 5 months old, she is shown reacting to our brother's jokes, and she is laughing up a storm because she is able to see his facial expressions and the others' reactions around her. This is now Katie at 2 years old, and a big part is mimicking behavior. So she is able to mimic our brother and my behavior of patting her lap and singing to her favorite song that she learned in music class, as well as acknowledging the presence of our cat Zoe. So from birth to 3 months, Katie is not very alert or aware and is just kind of observing her surroundings. And at 3 to 6 months was when she was first able to voluntarily smile. At 6 to 9 months, she is playing more into the emotional and social scene, and she is able to start laughing, and she cries a lot as well. At 9 to 12 months, she is able to mimic more behaviors such as playing in the kitchen with her brother Adam. And at 1 to 2 years, she is shown yet again mimicking behavior of shopping at the mall. So what are cognitive developmental stages? So cognitive includes the brain's ability to retain information as well as grow, which is called brain plasticity. And so at 2 months old, Katie was only able to see the patterns in the toy above her, as well as observe the movement of her chair and the music in the background. Here at 8 months old, she is able to pick out a specific toy as well as respond to our father's voice. At this age, she was just able to understand that Katie is her name, as well as pick up on the voices of her caregivers and recognize which voice belongs to who. And now at 2 years old, Katie is able to move objects with purpose, and she's able to identify different colors, even though she's not technically correct. So from birth to 3 months, Katie was only able to see within 8 to 12 inches of her face. And this is the perfect distance to see a caregiver's face when holding her. So this is when she began to develop facial recognition. And at 3 to 6 months, she was able to observe more of the world around her, and she was able to pick up on different shapes and colors. At 6 to 9 months, she was beginning to mimic more behaviors, such as reading a menu. At 9 to 12 months, she enjoys reading picture books and looking at different texts. And at 1 to 2 years, she enjoys, yet again, mimicking behaviors such as enjoying this toy she's never played with before. And at 18 months is when children actually recognize themselves in the mirror for the first time. So what is language development? So language development includes both verbal and nonverbal ways of communication, because they have to get their point across somehow. So at 2 months old, Katie is shown playing with her 2-month-old friend, and since they're not able to babble or talk, they know that they should communicate with each other, so they just kind of make sounds. Now at 13 months old, she was able to develop more of a tone of voice to express her emotions. And so here she is shown exclaiming that she is happy about taking a picture. So she likes to shout for joy. And now at 2 years old, she is able to form specific words in small sentences. And she is even able to joke around, bringing in the comedy, with our father about the ages of the different things, because she was pretty excited when she turned 2.
How old are you? How old are you?
2.
Really? And who's 2?
Anna.
No. Who's 2? Who's 2?
Mama.
No. Who's 2? Who is it? Who's 2?
Anna.
No. Who's 2?
So as you can tell from her facial expression, she thought she was being pretty funny. So from birth to 3 months, Katie, as I said earlier, is not very alert or aware, so she's just kind of picking up on the words people are saying around her, and this is where caregivers come in, have a big part, because if they talk more to each other or to the baby, then this will influence her to want to mimic that behavior and begin to pick up on words. And at 3 to 6 months, Katie started to engage more in the conversation by making expressive sounds, and at 6 to 9 months was when she started to babble. In 9 to 12 months, she could say simple words, and 1 to 2 years, she could say simple sentences. In fact, at 18 months, kids start to pick up on around 9 words per day, which makes up for their extensive vocabulary. In fact, she knows the entire chorus of Let It Go from Frozen. So how does this topic connect to biology? Well, biology is the study of life evolving, and as you can tell, Katie has evolved quite a bit in the period of 2 years. Also, many biological changes were made, such as with the vernix caseosa, both in vitro and through the development of the child. Also, mitosis, meiosis, and sexual reproduction are 3 processes that are vital to go well in order to have a successful child developmental process. So some challenges I faced were finding the depth of scientific content, because my initial research had a lot of parent magazines and more casual articles to kind of inform parents of what their children should be doing by a certain age. However, I wanted to dive deeper into that and kind of connect it more to biology, and so I had to look up on different scientific articles as well as the protein data bank to learn about different biological changes. But the strength for me and my advantage is that this was a very personal experience, because I come home and I get to be with her every day, and so I got to see this progression of 2 years with my own eyes. And she really has inspired me to pursue a career at the intersection of science and children. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed and learned a little about child development. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So in your presentation, you talked a lot about like how like your sister's development through like for 2 years. Did you like cross-check that with like the different scientific articles so you can like make sure like that's actually like what like at 3 years at 3 months she's supposed to do this, at 9 months do you like cross-check, or is it just like based off your personal experience?
Yeah, well, before I even looked at the pictures and looked at how much she's progressed, I looked at the scientific articles and figured out where children should be by different milestones, and then I tried to put my personal experience into that and kind of, yeah, so they were cross-checked. Any other questions? Thank you for your time. Okay.
Do you ever get annoyed with your sister?
I never get annoyed with my sister.
How?
Sometimes I do get annoyed with my brother.
Alright, good. Yeah. I was gonna say I think yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Amrita, and for my project, I researched how injuries can affect, dance floors can affect injuries. And the two types of dance styles that I chose were Bharatanatyam and ballet. I've been learning Bharatanatyam for the past 10 years of my life, and my mom is my teacher. She runs a dance school here in Worcester, and that dance school has been part of my life since day one, and I'm very passionate about it. And that's why I chose to do my project on Bharatanatyam. I wanted to learn about the biology behind injuries, and that's how I connected it with biology. So, what is ballet? Many of you probably have witnessed a dancer who does ballet. It is a Western classical dance form. It is a graceful style that encounters leaps, jumps, and an important technique called point. Point is where the dancer is balancing on their tips of their toes. Bharatanatyam is the other type of dance style that I chose. Many of you probably haven't heard of this, but it is the South Indian classical dance form. The style is marked by the plie position or the half-sitting posture. In Bharatanatyam, the technical term would be Adamandi. The dance form has intricate footwork, facial expressions, and hand gestures to depict Indian literature. The intricate footwork is done through stamping, and stamping is important because then the dancer can hear their own beat and sync it with the dance song's beat. So I have a snippet of my performance in Hanover Theater a couple of weeks ago, which I did with my friend. So that was just a small snippet from the whole dance. As you may have seen, most of the dance was done in the plie position or the half-sitting posture. So how does flooring actually affect injuries, or why is it important? Well, flooring is important because it reduces the risk of injuries in both Bharatanatyam and ballet. The force that goes into the floor ideally should be absorbed, as energy returned directly back to the body can cause serious injuries. Most floors, at least in dance studios, are wooden flooring, and I wanted to validate that wooden flooring would be the best type for dance studios, so I conducted an experiment to validate that this was true. So here is my experimental setup. The general gist was where I dropped the ball from a certain height and I measured the rebound height, and the higher the rebound height was, the less absorbent my flooring type was, so that meant that the flooring was less ideal for a dance studio. So here I stood on a stool and I had a 4-foot ruler, and the stool was about 2 feet, which was a total of 6 feet in height, and I dropped the ball on 5 different types of floorings that I found around my house: vinyl, tile, concrete, carpet, and hardwood. Each of these were under wood except for the concrete. And according to my results, carpet was the best as it absorbed the most of the shock. However, carpet isn't a practical flooring for dance studios. It's not a smooth surface, so dancers can easily trip and fall, and this is especially true for ballet. And however, this could be less of an issue in Bharatanatyam. In general, it is an important factor to consider that the flooring itself isn't smooth. So second to carpet was hardwood. And so in hardwood, there are many different types of flavors of hardwood. So I wanted to see which type would be the best for dance studios. So I further studied and I got 5 different types of wood: engineered maple, engineered bamboo, oak, Brazilian cherry, and maple. I went to lumber liquidators to get these 5 samples. I also got a dance pad, which you can see. The difference between engineered wood and regular wood is where engineered wood the wood is sandwiched between layers of plywood. So in engineered maple, for example, there'd be a layer of maple, plywood, another layer of maple, and so on. And maple itself, according to the worker at Lumber Liquidators, he said that it was one of the most frequently bought woods, and it's supposed to be absorbent and has a lot of give. And plywood is resilient and also is known to be absorbent and has a lot of give. I went on to do the same experiment. I did it twice, once where the wood pieces were on concrete and once where the wood pieces were on the dance pad. So obviously when the woods are on the dance pad, it will be more absorbent. The dance pad is specifically created so that it will be more absorbent, whereas the concrete is not absorbent at all. So from my experiment, the results told me that engineered bamboo was the best type for dance studios, and it has the most give and it's also the most absorbent. So flooring, I went through this experiment not knowing how this actually affects different injuries in Bharatanatyam and ballet. So how does it actually affect these injuries that people can get? Well, there's an important tissue called cartilage, and it's a flexible connective tissue, and it's the shock absorbers of our body, and it's in our joints. It also protects bone-to-bone contact. So in Adamandi, which is in Bharatanatyam, there are two types of injuries that are mainly affected by the floor. One is chondromalacia patella, or the runner's knee, and the other one is osteoarthritis. Chondromalacia patella is where the articular cartilage, this is the cartilage behind the kneecap, is overused and gets worn down. So in that picture, you can see gaps in the cartilage, and that's because it's been overused. And over time, what will happen is the actual kneecap bone will start rubbing against the femur bone, and it's very painful. I actually have runner's knee, and for me, it's not a severe injury. I found out last year when I had to sit for 4 hours continuously cross-legged for one of my concerts. I sing Carnatic music, and whenever I danced before sitting for 4 hours, it was much more painful than when I didn't. And for those who have a more serious version of the runner's knee, they tend to do physiotherapy, or it can go to the extremes of getting a knee replacement. And for me, it just was resting and making sure that I didn't do the 4 hours every single day so that it wouldn't increase the pain. And the other type of injury was osteoarthritis. And this is where the articular cartilage of the femur, which is the thigh bone, and the meniscus cartilage of the tibia, which is the shin bone, over time they break down, and this is because of old age and also overuse. This results in bone-to-bone contact of the femur and the tibia, and also over time the knee joint actually becomes stiff. So this you won't usually see in younger dancers. It is more often or common in older dancers, and this will come over time and doesn't come in an instant. The same osteoarthritis is common in dancers who do point work. The other type of injury is metatarsal stress fractures, and this is where the bones in their toes, they actually are fractured because of the amount of weight that is put on their feet when they're on point. Over time, that will create stress, and it will end up in fractures. And for people who do point work, it's usually in the second and third metatarsal, just because that's where all their weight is concentrated. And so here, most dancers don't usually know that they have a fracture, and they continue to do point work. And over time, a lump is created because the body is trying to heal that fracture. However, since the body can't, since they are continually doing point work, a lump is created because that's how the body's trying to heal it. And when they go to the doctor and get diagnosed with it, it takes more time to heal as they've been continuously and repetitively going on point, and further increasing the pain and making the injury worse. So overall, from this project, I've learned that flooring types quicken the progression of injuries, And this project can be applied to different sports or any athletic activity for that matter. Dance is just one small area where this is important and can be applied to many different sports such as tennis, soccer, or basketball. Some things that worked well for me were I was able to find many studies done for ballet. However, I wasn't able to find as many for Adamandi since Bharatanatyam is not a commonly known dance style. I had to further research into hyperflexion or injuries created from bending of the knee, and from there I had to make connections between how Bharatanatyam, the stamping, is done, and the injuries from hyperflexion, and make that connection, which took more time than ballet, which was more straightforward since many of the studies had been done for ballet. And I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. It's more like an observation question. So, when you relate the injuries to the flooring, did you have any studies or follow-up for either type of dance where young girls or older girls decrease their dance instead of trying to manipulate the flooring? Instead of dancing for 4 hours, they would, decide, I'm not going to dance anymore because my knee hurts or I need surgery. Did you find anything?
Can you repeat the question?
No, that's the question. Well, if you were looking at flooring causing injury, were there any studies that showed if you had a lot of injuries due to the flooring that there were people that no longer danced because of the injuries?
I didn't look into that, but flooring in general does not cause the injuries. It just quickens the progression. And so if you dance on a harder floor such as concrete, and I've experienced this both in India and here most of the floors have a wooden flooring underneath, whatever's the flooring on top is. And in India, most of the floors are concrete. So there, what happens, it's more painful to dance. So it quickens the progression. It doesn't really cause the injury. So I haven't done research on how people have quit because of these injuries, but I do know that this is just a cause of it. Thank you. Good job. Yeah.
I had a friend who was a sophomore. I thought she did it early. Years ago.
You can do it in the Albert.
Hi everyone, my name's Zoe Alpert, and for my 20% project, I chose to study canine anxiety. Anyone that knows me knows I love my dog. He really is my whole life. My friends get annoyed with me because I just constantly talk about him. He will literally just be taking a nap, and I'll show them picture after picture of him, even though he's not doing anything. So when I found out about a year ago that he developed anxiety, I felt even closer to him. I felt closer to him because I myself also have anxiety. Through this project, I wanted to learn how my dog and I are different and how we're also similar. What is anxiety? Anxiety is not just being afraid for a test or a presentation like this one. It's these messages that are constantly running through your mind that you can't find a way to turn off. My anxiety surrounded other people being mad at me or people being disappointed in me. Any dog can be at risk for anxiety because it is genetic. This means that if a dog's mother or father has anxiety, they are likely to get it too. Any dog that has had a past trauma may also be likely to develop anxiety. Older dogs can also be at risk. There are a few different breeds that are more at risk than others. There are Labrador Retrievers, the Vizslas, the Border Collies, the American Cattle Dogs, or any working breeds. These dogs all have in common the fact that they're all working dogs. The reason working dogs are more likely to develop anxiety is because they were designed to always be doing something, always be running, always be hunting. So when they're more of a house dog, sitting at home all day, all these messages just keep building up and they don't know what to do. Murray, my dog, is a Labrador Retriever. So I connected this because this may be one of the reasons why he has anxiety. There are 3 main causes to canine anxiety. This includes fear, separation, or age. Fear can be anything from a loud noise like fireworks or a past trauma that's happened. Age is separation anxiety. 14% of dogs suffer from this. Separation anxiety is when a dog is separated from their family members and they get really anxious when they're not with them. As for age, dogs can develop cognitive dysfunction syndrome. This is like a canine Alzheimer's. So when they can't remember stuff, they can't remember, what do I do when I need to go to the bathroom? They get really nervous. Many older dogs may also start to lose their eyesight. So when they can't see what's in front of them, they also get nervous. Diagnosing a dog with anxiety is very difficult because unlike humans, they can't talk. They can't say, I'm feeling nervous or I have these symptoms. It's important for their owners to help their dog and speak to the vet and say, this is what I've observed. Murray was diagnosed with anxiety after he was attacked at a dog park. An older male dog attacked him, and ever since then, he showed symptoms of anxiety. There are a few main symptoms you can look out for in dog anxiety. These include an abnormal heart rate, abnormal panting, destroying parts of the house, chewing excessively until their teeth become little nubs, or anything else that a typical dog wouldn't do. I've noticed a few of these with Murray. Murray really just can't settle down sometimes, but he also pants a lot. He pants when he's not hot or he hasn't been on a run. It'll be air conditioned and he'll still start to pant. Some of these symptoms I've noticed with myself. I may not, but if I have a panic attack, I'll start breathing really heavy, and this is like a human panting. Another symptom is burrowing in parts of the house. At night, Murray goes in his crate and he digs underneath every single pillow until he can no longer be seen. So in this first, I actually have the pictures to pass around. In this first image, Murray brought out not 1, not 2, but 3 toys. He was bringing one out, started to cry, went back, got another one, came back, and he finally laid down after he really tired himself out. The second picture is a symptom of separation anxiety. Whenever we're on the couch, he'll come really close to us and sit really close. He does not like to be far away from us. This is a video from the first picture when he was restless. It's not loading, but that's basically the majority of it. There are coping strategies for dogs with anxiety. The first is distractions. It's really important that when your dog is showing anxiety, that you distract him. This can either be with a toy like a ball, start a game of fetch, or give him a bone. Murray has one toy that is his absolute favorite, and he really, when he's getting anxious, he'll tell you with verbal or physical cues. This toy is a hard bone, plastic bone, with an insert that you put in the middle. He'll sit and chew on this until he's done, and it takes him about 45 minutes. After this, he's tired out, and this has helped him forget about whatever he was anxious about. 3 more pictures. I take a lot of pictures of my dog.
Your dog.
All these pictures have one thing in common. He's chewing on a toy. In my family, we call these toys his binkies. He's literally like a toddler. He'll take the big nose of a toy and suck on it until he feels better. Another coping skill is early exposure and desensitization. When you first get a dog, it's important to bring them to new situations, like a park or a beach. This can help them learn new smells, and so when you bring them there in the future, they'll feel less nervous. Desensitization is bringing a dog to an environment which they feel scared in. When you're there, you can stand next to them. If they're exhibiting behavior you don't like, you should just ignore it. If they're doing something that you like by being calm, you can reward them with either a treat or motivational encouragement. It's important to ignore the dog if they're doing something you don't like, because a dog, it's hard to differentiate between positive reinforcement and negative. So when they hear you saying anything to them, they say, "Oh, this is attention. I like this. I'll keep doing whatever I'm doing." So unfortunately, I don't have pictures for these ones, but when Murray was little, we have a house in Maine, so he loves to go to the beach. When he was little, we first started by walking him along the edge so he could see it and start to smell the new smells. After he got used to this, we started to walk him along the edge. Later, he felt really good, and he started to go in the water and play with other dogs. Another one is that Murray comes to drop me off at the bus every morning. We live in a neighborhood where a lot of people like to walk their dogs in the morning, so when Murray sees another dog, he used to get really scared and he would start barking and just walking back and forth in the car. So when he did this, we just ignored him. But now when he sees a dog, he's able to just watch them go by. He doesn't do anything. When he does this, we reward him with a treat. Another coping skill is safe spaces. Many dogs will find a space in the house where they feel most safe in. It's really important that this space is always available for dogs and that you do not enter. This space is their space. Murray does, more pictures, I know. Murray does have a safe space in his house. This is his crate. When he feels nervous, such as when a new guest comes over, he might enter the crate until he's gotten used to it and some time has passed, and then he'll come back out. He does have other safe spaces throughout the house. One of them is underneath a bench. I found that he really likes to be under dark, enclosed spaces. I related this to my anxiety because I do have my own safe spaces, like my house or my room. If I enter a place I don't like on the first day of school when you enter a new classroom, you become anxious. So if some of these coping strategies are not working, you can talk to your vet and try medication for your dog. SSRIs and serotonin. The medication prescribed for anxiety is actually the same technique for humans and dogs. SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. In your body, there is this compound called serotonin, and Murray's vet described it as a happy chemical. You have these neurotransmitters that will take them out when they're done with it. People with anxiety or depression have a lack of serotonin. SSRIs will make sure that there's enough serotonin in the body and will stop these neurotransmitters from taking it back up. You can help each other. Dogs and humans really reflect upon each other's emotions. If you see that your dog is anxious, that may be because you're reflecting some anxiety. So if you're feeling anxious, you might want to try and tone it down so that your dog doesn't get anxious. But if they're anxious, try and keep calm so that they don't get anxious. My reflection. In this presentation, yes, that's him with a hat. In this presentation, the thing that worked best for me was similar to Anna's. He's my dog, so I was able to observe him a lot. But this is also tricky as I'm in school 5 days a week, and with sports after school, I don't get to observe him as much as I want to. But my mom, I had her to rely on to take some observations and text them to me. These are my pictures cited, references. Does anyone have any questions?
How old is the dog?
He's 3 right now, so he's still in puppy stage.
Does this work for any other animals, or anxiety happens for any other animals other than dogs?
It does. One of my friend's dog, he also has anxiety, and he's tried some coping strategies that have worked for him too.
Do they think that, does that think that the anxiety was something that Murray had his entire life? Because you were talking about the serotonin levels,
Mhm.
maybe that's something that he was born with, or was there a specific event that triggered that imbalance in the chemicals?
I think
You mentioned the dog attack.
as he was a puppy, he was a little anxious, but not enough for us to notice it. After he was attacked, we definitely noticed it. He cried more, he barked more, and he was more restless. Anyone have any other questions?
Will the dog grow out of it as he gets older?
He may, because dogs do have very short memory, so they may forget, but due to the serotonin levels, they may not grow out of it. Any other questions? So Murray does want to say a quick hello.
Oh.
So some symptoms you might notice right now, his tail is wagging. This may not just be because he is excited. He may also be nervous. Yeah, he is smelling a lot of new smells. So this is actually really great for him because he's becoming desensitized. He wants to do a few tricks. Murray, sit. Sit. High five. Nope, sit. High five. Good job. He knows one more. We worked on this one for a while. Sit. Murray, kiss. Good job. Thank you.
So, one more question. So I see that you're working on a lot of different types of structured responses.
Mm-hmm.
How does that end up helping with the anxiety?
Like, what do you mean by structured responses?
You were communicating with the dog, saying sit,
Mm-hmm.
kiss.
That's really good because when he has anxiety, when he knows tricks that he's practiced on, that's really a distraction. So he's distracted from the stuff around him that's making him anxious. Thank you.